sewing friends, I'm Karina from Lifting Pins and Needles. Welcome to my channel. In this video I'm continuing a little skill builder series about skirts, and today I'm going to talk lining, and you can apply these same concepts on pants as well. Sometimes you buy wool to make pants, or scratchy or transparent fabrics, and you might want to line them as well. So it's the same thing, exact same thing. So in the previous videos, I did show you some of my skirts that I have made in the past, and I had so many comments and even emails. You can email me as well, asking me about the lining. And I purposely said I'm not talking about lining because I knew that if I included that with all the others, it would just be too much content, too confusing. I'd rather just keep each item separately so that it's more clear, you know? So I have my example here of a skirt. It's inside out with the facing and the lining underneath, and this is the back. The zipper is broken. I still haven't fixed it. I made a very detailed video about how I made this skirt last year, and if you want to reinforce, I will link that so you can watch that if you want to. But you also see that it's got facings inside with no darts inside. The darts are on the skirt and it keeps the same shape. So let's hop on now and watch the video on how to do the lining. Okay, we are just going to create the lining pattern piece so we can have it and not have to do this process every time we make a skirt. This is the facing that comes with the skirt. It's already with the skirt, and it's 6 centimeters wide that way, you know. So when you put this on the center there, matching that at the top, you measure down 6. So from there you're just going to measure 6 centimeters and mark it. I've marked it there in a red pen. Now I mark it on the pattern piece because I remember that, so when I look at my skirt pieces, I know that that's how it's going to look. I'm going to make a mark with my tracing wheel on that red line so that it shows up on my little yellow paper at the back. I'm going to draw that little piece of dart that's left over, and then I'm going to trace around the hip here, all the way down. Now I usually make my lining about, I don't know, half an inch shorter than the skirt, because then you have to have the hem, and you always want the lining a little bit shorter. So that's all. You can see some marks there. I can see the little dots my tracing wheel left me. So I can complete that. This is the back. This is the fold. You can see a little mark where I made it a little bit shorter than the main skirt piece. I'm just going to do the line across there and trim it there. And now this will be my back lining piece. Remember, these don't have seam allowance. This is a block, so you need to have them without seam allowance so that you can make changes to them with a pure pattern. Here is my back lining piece. Now when I put this on top of my main skirt, you're going to notice essentially it's like color blocking. Only you're color blocking your lining fabric and you're facing up here. So they are exactly the same. There. Remember, this facing is curved because it doesn't have the darts that your main skirt has, but once you match them together they will be exactly the same. So you can see here that my lining is a tad shorter than the main, and you're good to go. So I've made it in different colors so that I remember that this is the lining. I'm gonna write here, back lining. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the front. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the front. I have already marked my red line there, measuring from the waistline down 6 centimeters, which is what the facing measures, you know. So this is my front facing, and I'm going to place this right on the edge of the paper there. Okay, so here is my front lining. I've marked it there, front lining, it's on the fold. And you can see that when I attach on that facing, it will be the exact same thing as your main fabric that is under there. It's also attached shorter. Now we have our completed pieces for this skirt. Depending on the type of fabric, you may or may not want to line it. I sometimes don't line, depends just what you want. But here it is. Lining, facing. Now you need to add seam allowances when you cut your fabric. So you need to add on here and you need to add on here so you can attach them. So always do that. And that is all. So you see, it's a very simple thing. If you want to think of it as similar to color blocking, you know, when you want to color block and you have, say, like a main piece, and you say, I'm going to cut it like that and make one color and the other. You slash it, you add your seam allowance, you piece it together, and then you basically have the same shape, like the same pattern piece, only in different colors, different fabrics. This is the exact same thing. Your lining inside is going to be identical to your skirt. You are going to be attaching that lining piece underneath your facings. You know, and you saw there how I separated the facing from the lining. And when you want to cut that on fabric, just add seam allowance. Now I work without seam allowance and I keep it consistent because I know I have to add seam allowances everywhere. When you do things on patterns that have seam allowances and you want to color block, you need to remember to add those seam allowances only on some seams and on others not. You know, it can get a bit confusing. So that is my rationale to not working with seam allowances usually on my patterns, on my own patterns, you know. When I'm working with commercial patterns or others, I have to remember. And I've even gone to the extreme of measuring the seam allowances on the patterns and just cutting them all out so they don't have them. But that's just me, I'm just weird that way. Anyway, yeah, you attach your facing to your lining and you're going to have identical pieces that you're going to stitch onto the top of your skirt. Flip under stitch, and you're going to be done, and you're going to have a wonderful lined skirt. I think skirts need to be lined. The ones that I haven't lined, I've always regretted because I feel a bit self-conscious, like you're going to see the lines of your undies sometimes. I don't know. I'm self-conscious about it. I think the way the skirt falls is always nicer when it's lined. Now, the other thing, what if you want to line your skirt and you're using a waistband? And just a few images here about that. Now, if you want to change the style of this skirt and add on a waistband on the top, doesn't matter what type of waistband, rectangular waistband or a curved one, and you want to line your skirt, you just cut identical pieces, nothing new. You cut your main and your fabric identical. You sew your skirt and then you attach it on at the top before putting your waistband on. So easy way of lining. If you're going to do a waistband, you just cut the exact same thing from your lining fabric. So this is just the easiest way to line. You basically cut two skirts that are the same. Like this skirt has a flounce, so I actually cut the flounce on my lining, but I left it shorter. But it's essentially the same thing. It's like you're sewing it twice. And those dots that the skirt has, I just pleat them in there. So wrong sides together. So your skirt with your lining, wrong sides together. Match everything up on the top. Do a basting around them. I always do that with a long stitch. Keep it together. Then your skirt acts like one piece, and then you can go ahead and attach whatever waistband you're doing. This is a rectangular one, and it can also be a curved one. Now, one thing I want to mention, this is a skirt that on my main fabric has 6 panels, and it's got that mermaid thing going on. I don't need to do that inside my lining. Like, if you want to, go ahead. But you don't need to. Your lining can be nice and just a normal lining inside, you know. This is going to be tight against your body, and then the skirt's going to fall and drape out, you know, outside, so it won't affect the fact that I did this. Now, the other important thing is that if you have a main fabric that is 0 stretch, use a lining that's 0 stretch. If you have a stretch woven, I use stretch satin. It's the best lining for me, easy to find here. I've got meters of that stuff in all sorts of colors, so I never run out. Yeah, if you have a stretch woven and you're counting on the amount of stretch for feet, and then you go and do a lining that's 0 stretch, you're not going to be able to get into your skirt. Anyway, that is all. Very simple. I hope it helps you. So you can go ahead and line any skirt you want or any pant you want, because it is the exact same thing. Bye and happy sewing.